Picture this, you're outnumbered 4-1. Your men are sick, exhausted, and running out of food. The enemy has the best cavalry in Europe, superior armor, and home field advantage. By every military calculation, you're about to be annihilated. But then, something extraordinary happens. Your archers unleash hell. The enemy's greatest strength becomes their fatal weakness, and in a single afternoon, you destroy one of the most powerful armies in the world. This is the Battle of Agincourt, where 6,000 English soldiers defeated 25,000 French knights. And it's just one of history's most impossible military victories. Hey, I'm Michael, and welcome to Hoodie History. It's great to have you here. Today, I'm diving into 5 battles that defy all logic. Incredible underdog victories where the winners should have been wiped off the map, but instead changed the course of history forever. These aren't your typical David versus Goliath stories. These are tactical masterpieces, brilliant gambles, and moments where everything that could go wrong for the favorite did go wrong, while everything that should have failed for the underdog worked perfectly. If you love all kinds of incredible stories from history, you've come to the right place. Hoodie History is all about bringing the past to life with new videos dropping regularly. If that sounds good to you, hit subscribe and stick around for more amazing historical tales. So, are you ready to explore 5 battles where military genius, incredible luck, and sheer audacity combined to create victories that shouldn't exist? Let's jump back in time to witness the impossible. Battle number 1, the Battle of Marathon, when Athens saved Western civilization. Our first impossible victory takes us back 2,500 years to a beach 26 miles northeast of Athens, where a small Greek army was about to face what seemed like certain annihilation. The year is 490 BCE, and the Persian Empire, the largest empire the world had ever seen, was expanding westward. King Darius I had already conquered most of the known world, and now he wanted to punish Athens for supporting a rebellion in his territories. The Persian invasion force was massive, at least 25,000 seasoned warriors, including elite cavalry, archers, and infantry. They had conquered every army they'd faced. These weren't just soldiers, they were the military machine of a superpower. Standing against them, about 10,000 Athenians and maybe 1,000 allies from Plataea. No cavalry, limited armor, and they were essentially alone. Sparta had promised help, but wouldn't arrive for days due to a religious festival. Everything favored the Persians. They had superior numbers, battle-tested troops, cavalry that could devastate infantry, and the tactical advantage of choosing where to fight. The Greeks were facing the ancient equivalent of taking on the entire US military with a local militia. But the Athenian general Miltiades had a crazy plan. Instead of the traditional thick center formation, Miltiades deliberately weakened his center and packed his flanks with his best troops. It was either tactical suicide or tactical genius. When the battle began, the Persian center punched through the thin Greek middle exactly as planned. The Persian army surged forward, thinking they'd won, but then the strengthened Greek flanks closed in like a pincer, surrounding the Persians in what became history's first recorded double envelopment. The result? Complete catastrophe for the Persians. They lost around 6,400 men, while the Greeks lost only 192. The great Persian war machine had been shattered by a group of citizen soldiers defending their homeland. And here's the legendary kicker. According to later stories that emerged after the battle, a Greek messenger named Pheidippides ran the 26 miles back to Athens to announce the victory, inspiring a modern marathon race. The legend says he collapsed and died after delivering the news, but his message saved Western civilization as we know it. The victory at Marathon proved that the mighty Persian Empire could be beaten, setting the stage for Greece's golden age and everything that followed in Western culture. Battle number 2, the Battle of Midway. 4 minutes that changed World War II. Fast forward over 2,000 years to the Pacific Ocean in 1942, where another impossible victory was about to unfold, this time with the fate of the entire Pacific hanging in the balance. It's June 4th, 1942, just 6 months after Pearl Harbor devastated the US Pacific Fleet. Japan seemed unstoppable, having conquered territory from the Aleutian Islands to the edge of Australia. Admiral Yamamoto, the mastermind behind Pearl Harbor, was planning the knockout punch, the complete destruction of what remained of the US Navy. The Japanese force was staggering. 4 heavy aircraft carriers packed with elite pilots, escorted by battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. This was the most powerful naval strike force ever assembled, carrying over 250 aircraft, operated by pilots who had been training for decades. Against them, the Americans could barely scrape together 3 aircraft carriers, with less experienced pilots, many of whom had been in combat for only months. The US was still reeling from Pearl Harbor, desperately trying to rebuild their shattered Pacific fleet. Japan held every advantage: more ships, more planes, better pilots, and the element of surprise. Or so they thought. The Japanese plan was to lure the remaining American carriers into a trap and finish what they started at Pearl Harbor. But the Americans had one secret weapon that would turn the tide: code breakers. US Navy cryptographers had cracked the Japanese naval code, learning the exact details of the Japanese plan. Admiral Nimitz knew exactly where and when the Japanese would strike, turning their surprise attack into a perfectly laid ambush. The battle began disastrously for the Americans. Wave after wave of US torpedo bombers were shot down without scoring a single hit. The Japanese seemed invincible. But then, in just 4 minutes, everything changed. While Japanese fighters were busy destroying the low-flying torpedo bombers, American dive bombers arrived at high altitude, completely undefended. In those 4 miraculous minutes, US pilots struck 3 Japanese aircraft carriers, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, setting them ablaze and sending them to the bottom of the Pacific. A 4th carrier, Hiruyu, was sunk later that day. Japan lost 4 irreplaceable aircraft carriers and over 200 experienced pilots in a single day. The defeat was so catastrophic that it marked the beginning of Japan's inevitable retreat across the Pacific. One day, 4 minutes, the course of World War II changed forever. Battle number 3, the Battle of Alesia, Caesar's greatest gamble. Now let's travel back to ancient Gaul, where Julius Caesar was about to attempt something so audacious, so militarily insane, that it would either make him a legend or get his entire army massacred. It's 52 BCE, and Caesar's conquest of Gaul was forcing its greatest challenge. Vercingetorix, a charismatic Gallic chieftain, had united the warring Celtic tribes against Rome for the first time in history. This wasn't just another tribal skirmish, this was a coordinated rebellion that could end Caesar's career and Rome's expansion. Vercingetorix had withdrawn his 80,000 warriors to the hilltop fortress of Alesia, an impregnable stronghold surrounded by steep cliffs and rivers. Caesar arrived with about 60,000 Roman legionaries, but laying siege to such a fortress seemed hopeless. Here's where it gets crazy. While Caesar was besieging Alesia, a massive Gallic relief army of over 100,000 warriors was marching to break the siege. Caesar was about to be caught between 2 armies, outnumbered nearly 3-1, with nowhere to retreat. Any sane general would have withdrawn, but Caesar decided to double down. Caesar ordered his men to build not 1 but 2 massive walls around Alesia. The inner wall, called a circumvallation, trapped Vercingetorix inside the fortress. The outer wall, called a contravallation, protected the Romans from the approaching relief army. When completed, these walls stretched for over 10 miles, complete with spikes, trenches, and traps. The Romans had essentially built a fortress around a fortress, trapping themselves in the middle. When the relief army arrived, Caesar's forces found themselves fighting on 2 fronts simultaneously, defending against sorties from Alesia while repelling attacks from the relief army. It should have been suicide. But Caesar had one final masterstroke. He led a cavalry charge that broke through the relief army from behind, causing a panic that spread through the Gallic forces. Thinking they were surrounded, both armies collapsed. Vercingetorix surrendered to save his people from starvation. The Gallic wars were over, and Caesar's reputation was secured forever. He had achieved what military historians still consider impossible, winning a siege while being besieged himself. The victory at Alesia didn't just end the Gallic wars, it gave Caesar the wealth, prestige, and veteran legions he would need to cross the Rubicon and change Rome forever. Battle number 4, the Battle of Agincourt, when mud defeated knights. Okay, let's return to that muddy field in northern France where we started our story, because the Battle of Agincourt deserves its place as one of history's most shocking military upsets. October 25th, 1415, King Henry V of England had invaded France to press his claim to the French throne, but his campaign was falling apart. His army of about 6,000 men had been ravaged by dysentery during a failed siege of Harfleur. They were hungry, sick, and trying to retreat to the English-controlled port of Calais. Blocking their path was a French army that outnumbered them at least 2-1. This wasn't just any army, it was the flower of French nobility, heavily armored knights on massive war horses, the medieval equivalent of tanks. These knights had trained their entire lives for war and considered themselves invincible. The English were trapped. The French controlled the only route to safety, and retreat would mean being hunted down and slaughtered. Henry's men were significantly outnumbered, exhausted, diseased, and facing the most elite heavy cavalry in Europe. Medieval warfare was dominated by heavy cavalry. When knights charged, infantry formations usually broke and ran. The English had some of the best archers in the world, but their arrows couldn't penetrate the French knights' state-of-the-art plate armor. Henry V chose his battlefield perfectly. The field of Agincourt was freshly ploughed and had been soaked by days of October rain, creating a muddy quagmire that would bog down heavy cavalry. When the French knights charged, their massive war horses immediately began sinking into the mud. The charge that should have scattered the English instead became a slow-motion disaster. Knights fell from their horses and couldn't get up in their heavy armor, drowning in the mud. Meanwhile, English longbowmen unleashed thousands of arrows. While they couldn't penetrate armor directly, they could wound horses, cause confusion, and exploit gaps in the armor of fallen knights. The result was catastrophic for the French. Thousands of nobles died, including some of the most important figures in France. English losses were remarkably light, around 400 men, compared to thousands of French casualties. In a single afternoon, the military dominance of heavy cavalry was shattered forever. The longbow had proven that common soldiers could defeat noble knights, changing the nature of medieval warfare. The victory made Henry V a legend and inspired Shakespeare's famous St. Crispin's Day speech. More importantly, it secured English control of northern France for another generation and proved that tactical innovation could overcome overwhelming numerical disadvantage. Battle number 5, the Battle of Lepanto, breaking the Ottoman naval empire. Our final impossible victory takes us to the waters off Greece, where the largest naval battle in history was about to break the dominance of one of the world's great empires. By 1571, the Ottoman Empire controlled most of the eastern Mediterranean. Their navy seemed unstoppable, having conquered Cyprus and threatening to dominate all Mediterranean trade routes. The Ottoman fleet was enormous, over 250 galleys manned by elite janissaries and experienced sailors. Facing them was the Holy League, a desperate alliance of Catholic maritime states, including Spain, Venice, and the Papal States. Their combined fleet was slightly smaller but carried a secret weapon, 6 massive galleasses, floating fortresses bristling with cannons. The Ottomans had every reason to be confident. Their navy had dominated the Mediterranean for decades, winning victory after victory. Their galleys were fast, maneuverable, and crewed by some of the finest sailors in the world. The Christian fleet was a patchwork alliance of traditional enemies hastily thrown together. Different languages, different tactics, different agendas. These alliances usually fell apart at the first sign of trouble. The battle began with the Holy League's galleasses, positioned ahead of their main fleet, unleashing devastating cannon fire into the Ottoman ranks. These floating fortresses had never been seen before. They were slower than traditional galleys, but carried far more firepower, giving the Christian fleet a crucial technological advantage. As the fleets clashed in brutal combat, several factors combined to decide the battle. The superior firepower of the Christian fleet began to tell, with their heavy cannons wreaking havoc on the Ottoman formations. Then the wind shifted in favor of the Christian fleet, giving them additional maneuverability. Finally, many of the Ottoman galley crews were Christian slaves who began rebelling when they saw their chance for freedom, turning the enemy's own ships against them. The Ottoman flagship was captured, their admiral killed, and their fleet shattered. Over 200 Ottoman vessels were captured or destroyed, while the Holy League lost only about 20 ships. The victory at Lepanto didn't just save Christian Europe from Ottoman expansion, it broke the myth of Ottoman naval invincibility forever. The Ottoman Empire would never again dominate the Mediterranean as it had for over a century. The battle inspired artists, poets, and writers across Europe. Cervantes, who fought at Lepanto and lost his left hand, later called it the most noble and memorable event that past centuries have seen, or future ones may hope to see. 5 battles, 5 impossible victories. From the muddy fields of Agincourt to the blue waters of the Mediterranean, we've seen how brilliant tactics, perfect timing, and sheer audacity can overcome overwhelming odds. These battles remind us that history isn't just about the biggest armies or the most advanced weapons, it's about human ingenuity, courage, and the occasional stroke of luck. Sometimes the underdog wins, not despite their disadvantages, but because of how they turn those disadvantages into strengths. So what do you think? Which of these impossible victories amazed you the most? Do you know of any other battles where the underdog achieved the unthinkable? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing about incredible historical moments that shouldn't have happened, but did. If you enjoyed this deep dive into military history's greatest upsets, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories from the past. And remember, if you want bite-sized historical content, check out Hoodie History Shorts for quick, punchy stories from history. There's a link in the description. Thanks for watching. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most impossible victories are the ones that change everything.